Plan Commission meeting to order. Roll call.
Anna here. Grillo here.
Kupczynski here.
Laura here. Kavich here. Aldani here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Guzikowski here. Laura here. Okay, I think we got them all. Everybody called in. Approval of minutes of February 2nd, 2022.
Have a correction.
If there are, just go ahead, Fred.
I've been moved and promoted to alderman.
Oh,
Congratulations.
yeah.
We'll change that.
I just wanted to know, Mayor, what ward do I have? Or
You
district?
know, nobody knows these days with the
Okay.
redistricting, so stand by and we'll get that corrected for you there, Fred.
Okay, thank you.
Or any other discussion or corrections to be needed? Hearing no discussion or comments, motion please.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of February 2nd, 2022,
As amended.
as amended. I'm sorry.
Oracle second. Roll call, starting with Commissioner Hanna.
Anna, aye. Grillo, aye.
Kupczynski, aye.
Laura, aye. David, aye. Guzikowski, abstain. Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
A lot of twos going on here. It was February 2nd, 2022, and now we're the 22nd and 22. Means nothing, but anyways, I just thought I'd point it out. Significant common council actions. Carrie, if you would.
Council approved a resolution approving a certified survey map submitted by Phil Preparo, CW Preparo, Inc. for the properties at 7030 South 13th Street and 1190 West Rawson Avenue. They also held an ordinance to repeal and recreate Chapter 17 of the zoning code of the municipal code. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. That will get us to item 7, and that is public hearing on a sign appeal on a proposed sign.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes.
Just for the record, there were no Board of Housing and Zoning Appeals
Oh.
actions, and the next report for the Parks and Recreation Commission actions will be March 22nd.
Thank you for that, Carrie. I jumped right over. As duly noted, we'll hear from the parks on the 22nd. Thank you, Carrie. Item 7A is a public hearing for a sign appeal on behalf of Texas Roadhouse. Would allow the applicant to install one 2-foot by 1 foot by 3 foot by 10-inch LED cabinet wall sign with 1/2-inch lettering on the west elevation of the restaurant on the property at 1489 West Broderick Place. Carrie, would you like to properly read that into record?
Certainly. City of Oak Creek, notice of public hearing before the Plan Commission. This is a corrected notice that is included in your packets. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held on February 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the Common Council chambers. The appellant is Emily Bernal. Tax key number and property locations as listed. This is for 1489 West Broadwick Place. The request is for variances from section 170706I, which states in part, single and 2-tenant office, retail, or manufacturing buildings shall be permitted 1 wall sign per tenant per street frontage. If granted, the variances would allow the applicant to install a 2-foot 1-inch by 3-foot 10-inch, 7.98 square feet LED cabinet wall sign with push-through 1/2-inch lettering on the west elevation. This is in addition to another wall sign that they are requesting on that elevation. The zoning of the property is B4 PUD, Business Highway District, Plan Unit Development. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present, dated this 18th day of January 2022. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Mayor Dan Bukavich, Chairman. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak on this matter, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and address all questions to the Plan Commission. This hearing is now open.
Great, thank you. Carrie, would you, any summation of it?
Sure.
You want to touch on it before I call public up?
Sure. The property is part of the Highgate development that we've talked about. It includes the properties on the corner, northwest corner of Drexel and 13th. And the request again is for a cabinet sign on the west elevation in addition to a channel letter wall sign that is being proposed in the next agenda item. What's on the screen before you is actually the locations of all the requested signs for Texas Roadhouse. The one that is highlighted is the one that is part of this variance request. It is on the west elevation, so this is facing I-94. It is above an entry elevation because this is their to-go area. What you don't see in this graphic is actually that those are letters that are pushed through, so it's kind of a combination of a cabinet slash kind of like push-through channel letters on here. There are variance considerations that are included in your packet. Basically, Plan Commission has jurisdiction over everything but content. And as part of the approval criteria, you shall find that there shall be no public harm and there shall be a public benefit. Variance considerations shall include enhancement of the overall character of a neighborhood or mitigation of unusual site conditions. The sign will not result in undue concentration of signage, which renders it difficult or confusing to read existing signs. And the effect of proposed sign may have on depreciating property values of a neighborhood. So those are the considerations and criteria. There is a motion for consideration at the end of the staff report in your packet if you wish to approve. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before I call the public applicant, would you like a chance to say anything, or you just want to wait on questions if you're present?
We have Emily Bernal, who is participating by Zoom, and she has raised her hand to speak.
Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you allowing me to be here with you this evening. Not too much else to add to what Carrie's already described, but just so everyone is aware, on that west elevation that Carrie is describing, that wall signage, the larger wall sign is 91.8 square feet, and the smaller sign that's subject to the variance request is 7.98 square feet. The total is actually under the allowable 100 square feet for this elevation. So I just wanted to make note of that as commissioners take that into consideration. And certainly I'm here for any additional questions as well.
Great. Thank you, Emily. This is a public hearing. We will make 3 calls. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach podium, and we will need your name and address for the record. This is the first call.
A body was found inside the rest of a Surgeon Bay bar that burned down this morning.
This will be the second call. Anybody wishing to speak? Item 7A, please approach podium, name and address. Third and final call. Anybody wishing to speak? Seeing no one or no one online, we will now close the public hearing and go on to consideration of that sign variance in item 8A. We'll open it up to the commissioners, starting on my left-hand side, Commissioner Hannah.
I have no questions.
Okay. Dawn?
No questions.
Ashley?
No questions.
Greg?
No questions. It seems appropriate. It's necessary, I believe, for kind of wayfinding to let people know that that's the door they need to go to pick up to-go orders. So, thanks.
Okay. Chris?
Same with, as Alderman Lorik, looks good, and wayfinding is key here.
Don?
My only question might be for Carrie. I have no problems with the signs. Do the flags fall under signs?
No, they do not.
Okay. I mentioned it last time. I don't know how it gets addressed, but the American flag needs to be above the Texas flag. That should be addressed at some point.
Yes, thank you. The applicant has made that aware, has been made aware of that. I just don't think that these renderings, which were submitted prior to that comment, have been revised to recognize that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Fred?
No comment.
Chauncey?
I do have a question for the applicant. Is there another Texas Roadhouse sign on this building? That's not on the west side, that's being proposed today.
That's actually, Commissioner Chandler, I can answer that. That's actually part of the sign plan review that's in the next agenda item.
In regards to the wayfinding signs, but is there another larger sign?
There are other signs that are proposed in the next agenda item, yes.
So which sides, the elevations would that be on?
It would be on the all but the north side, but the only sign that is under consideration for the variance in this item is the Texas Roadhouse to go sign.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I also have, no questions or comments regarding, the proposed sign and location that's going in. So there's no further discussion. Motion on 8A, please.
Lorik moves to approve a sign variance allowing the installation of one 2-foot 1 inch by 3-foot 10 inch, 7.98 square feet LED cabinet wall sign with push-through half-inch lettering on the west elevation of the Texas Roadhouse Restaurant located at 1480 West Broadwick Place.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call starting with Commissioner Carrillo.
Tuchinski, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Pavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I. Hannah, I.
Okay. That will get us to item 8B, and that is a sign plan review once again for Texas Roadhouse for the proposed restaurant on the property at 1489 West Broadwick Place. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is for 1489 West Broadwick Place, which is part of the Highgate development. And as proposed, there are 4 wall signs, which includes the one that was just granted the variance, 2 directional signs, and 1 monument sign. Locations are on the screen, a little bit difficult to read. So the monument sign is actually located at the north part of your screen, if you can see where my cursor is, so that would be highlighted by H and G. The wall signs, D is the sign that was just recommended for approval for the variance. B is the additional wall sign on the west elevation. A is the wall sign that will be on the south elevation. E and F are both wayfinding signs, and C is another wayfinding sign that's on the east elevation of the building that is above an entrance. So on the east elevation, since we were just talking about that, this is the main entry for the restaurant itself. So that is identified by this Texas Roadhouse cabinet sign. That does also have the push-through lettering that was similar to the to-go area that's mirrored on the west side. This is the only sign proposed for the east elevation. On the south elevation, this is the Texas Roadhouse sign that is the primary sign. This is what will be seen from Drexel Avenue. Keep in mind that the gray is not a backer plate, that's actually just showing the elevation of the building. Texas and Roadhouse are individual channel letters, and the little icon in the middle is a cabinet. That's their icon. On the west elevation, another Texas Roadhouse sign with the channel letters. That's the main primary sign. And then the Texas Roadhouse cabinet, again, that was part of the variance request. The reason that there was a variance for this is not because of the square footage in some, it is for the number. There is that requirement that there be 1 per street frontage, regardless of whether or not it is under the 100 square foot allowance. The monument sign, which will be at the entrance being on the northeast portion of the property, is shown on the screen here. The little to-go sign, that was identified as H. So there aren't 2 signs, it's all contained on this 1 monument sign. The monument sign does meet the dimensional requirements. And the directional signs are included here mostly just for Plan Commission reference. This identifies where people can go around the building in order to get to the to-go area, which is on the west elevation. The height of these are 4 foot as measured from grade. The actual square footage is just of the text, the copy side. And with that in mind, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Again, would the applicant like to say anything prior to going to commission? No?
Emily has raised her hand.
No, actually, I'm okay. So I'm really, again, more or less just here for your questions.
Okay. We'll start from my right this time. Jossie?
No questions.
Fred?
No comments.
Don?
No questions.
Chris?
No questions.
Greg?
No questions.
Ashley?
No questions.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Nothing here.
Wow, batting a 1,000 here. I don't have any either. It was very well explained. I think it's very appropriate, the signage that's laid out on this building, given its location. So with that being said, motion please.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the plan commission approves a master sign plan submitted by Emily Bernal Development Services LLC for the future Texas Roadhouse building at 1489 West Broadwick Place.
Oracle second.
Roll call, starting with Ashley.
Tuschinski, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Bill, aye.
Okay, very good. That will get us to item 8C, consideration of and review of conditions and restrictions for a request by Tracy Erickson for Peak Car Wash for a conditional use permit for a car wash on the property at 140 West Putes Road. And so Carrie's all set. She's going to take it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It occurred to me that I gave away my conditions and restrictions, so I do need to have that. This is a request for a conditional use permit that was recommended at the February 8th Plan Commission meeting. It is for a car wash facility. It's about a 5,100 square foot building for an automatic car wash office and 2-bay pet wash. As was mentioned in that previous review on the 8th, the pet wash is actually not going to be 24 hours as was originally proposed. This is the concept development plan that was presented at the February 8th meeting for Plan Commission consideration. We are not at the stage where we would be talking about site plan review. However, taking some Plan Commission comments into consideration, we did receive a revised concept plan that showed the change that is being proposed that will be considered at a site plan review at a later date. That would kind of close off the north access in favor of having access to those kiosk lanes on the east. So that's what this is showing. There may be further revisions that would be forthcoming in a future review, but they just wanted to make sure that the Plan Commission was aware that they did hear that comment and they are looking to change some of the layout. If you turn to the conditions and restrictions on page 2 of 6, starting with section 3, site and use restrictions, maintenance and operation requirements. Uses allowed on the property shall be limited to the B4 Highway Business District, the existing PUD, these conditions and restrictions, and all other applicable sections of code. Hours of operation for all car wash, vacuum, and pet wash facilities shall be between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. No outdoor storage. All parking lot areas shall be striped and landscaped in accordance with code. Landscaping in the median, and actually median is the wrong word to use here. The landscape strip that's on the south side of the property along Putes Road shall be enhanced to meet code requirements and included in the landscape plans to be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission. No pole signs, pennant flags, light pole flags, permanent banners, or flashing or blinking signs will be permitted. No box or cabinet signs other than logos with accompanying channel letters in conformance with all code sections shall be allowed. Under section 4, there are requirements for cross-access easements. Some of these are existing. There may be one that was requested by WISDOT that has to be created. That's still under review. Parking shall be per the requirements of code. Under section 5, page 3 of 6, lighting shall be shielded and directed downward. Color temperature of the fixture shall be a maximum of 3,500 kelvins, and light sources adjacent to residential areas shall be shielded on the side of the fixture adjacent to those residential areas. And under section, it says section 6, but it's actually section 8. Duration of conditional use permit is 10 years from the date of issuance of the conditional use permit. If there are any questions regarding the proposed conditions and restrictions, staff will be happy to answer them. Otherwise, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen for consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Carrie. Before we start, would the applicant like to say anything or just kind of wait on questions? Again. You want to speak or you want to wait? Oh, if you just want to wait, if questions arise, or if you want to come up and say a few things. Okay. Let's start to my left again. Christine,
I have no questions, thank you.
Dawn,
Nope. No question.
Ashley,
Engineering doesn't have any issues with the conditions or restrictions. We'll continue to work with the designer and developer regarding site layout.
Greg,
I don't really know if this is a question for conditions and restrictions, but I don't even know how a car wash operates as far as water. But that's a lot of water what cars are constantly going through. Do they collect their own water, or does that just all go down the drain? Maybe it's for the applicant. I mean, is there anything special that needs to be done, I guess, to figure in all the soapy water going somewhere?
The details of the drainage system and the underground storage and stormwater would be addressed once the civil plans are actually created and under review by the departments. So probably not for conditions and restrictions, although point taken, there will need to be adequate wastewater and capture and stormwater treatment.
Okay, thanks.
okay, Chris,
This is in my district and I don't have any questions. Support it.
okay, Don,
No questions.
Fred,
I still have a question about employee parking. I know we refer to a section, but I'm just a little concerned about that parking with the parking also I should say, north of the car wash. There's a big open parking area, and is it the owner planning on using that for his employees? Or
I don't know, but the parking requirements for car washes are actually based on the number of car wash bays and stacking areas. So we don't actually have anything in current code that mentions employees for car washes. But I will defer to the applicant to kind of answer any questions regarding employee parking on the site itself.
we will need your name and address, sir.
Sure. Tracy Erickson, 1611 Waterbury Drive, Bourbonnais, Illinois. The answer to your question is we only have 2 to 3 employees there at any given time. And so there's ample parking there for them right in our space.
do you own that property north of your car wash?
Right.
Who owns that property
To the north?
north of you?
I'm not sure. Probably the developer of the retail businesses.
That it, Fred?
That's it.
Chauncey?
No questions.
I guess just for me, and you can refresh my memory, I thought the dog wash was gonna be like 24 hours. Did that get,
That was actually, that was a typo. We were understood at the previous meeting on the 8th. It was discussed that actually the pet wash is only going to be open the same hours as the car wash.
will vacuums be available on site?
Excuse me?
Will vacs?
Vacuums? Yeah. Free vacuums are available on site.
Okay, and I imagine they'd be in the inner parking area as well.
They are. Yep.
Okay. I guess that's really it for my questions. I just, I really want to emphasize work with staff. As Ashley put it on the site layout. To me, it was very chaotic the first time, and I think it's still pretty tight. I go through there quite a bit. So, continue to work with staff. We have excellent staff and they'll be able to.
Sure. Absolutely.
Without a doubt. So, okay. Other than that, any other further discussion, questions? Okay, motion.
Sleeper moves that the planning commission recommends that the common council adopt the conditions and restrictions as part of a conditional use permit for a car wash on the property of 140 West Putes Road.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call, starting with Greg.
Lorik, aye.
Bukavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Lonnie, aye.
Sleeper, aye.
Chandler, aye. Hannah, aye. Bill, aye.
Krasinski, aye.
Okay, item 8D, review a proposed amendment to that of the municipal code to allow for private ambulance services conditional uses in the M1 manufacturing zone Carrie, can you bring us up to speed on this?
Sure. The applicants actually requested this as part of their personal property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. And as staff took a look at this, we realized that this is not a category that we have allowed anywhere in code. And it might be something that we would want to allow in more than just the M1 district, and certainly more than just on one property. Private emergency services are those private kind of ambulance services that you see. They are not in conflict with the public emergency services, so this would not interfere with fire department or police. What we are understanding is that these private emergency services actually provide kind of like transportation that is not, quote unquote, not emergency really, but just those local transportation services to hospitals. And as I mentioned, this is not something that we currently allow in code anywhere, so it might be useful to have this allowed in more than just the M1 districts. That's what staff is proposing. It's a little bit of a change from what was requested. So the incorporation into the new zoning code, this is a little bit of a timing situation. If this is recommended for approval, the hearing date that would be scheduled for common council consideration may be within the consideration for the new code. So we will just coordinate, make sure that everything is adopted and incorporated as necessary if this moves forward. So there is a suggested motion for approval. If there are any questions, I can certainly try and answer them. But I think that this is something that we are going to be seeing more often. And after consulting with our own Assistant Fire Chief Havey, this is something that is going to be very useful. Mr. Mayor.
Are we going to be able to comment on that as owners?
Sir, you'll have to come up to the microphone and speak, and we'll need your name and address. Come on up.
My name's Michael Pichowski. I live at 251 East Rawson Avenue, and I'm directly across the street from this property. So I have questions about this code, this zone change. And the thing I'm going to bring up here is that when you allow these type of businesses across from homeowners, it causes issues. And the St. John's property is already causing issues for us across the street as homeowners. And one of the things I can bring up about this property is that they have allowed more. The business was originally set up that we were told was going to be allowed for basically a 9-to-5 type operation, and that there's like 15 storefronts there right now, 2 buildings, and they got property to build another storefront. We were told that this was going to be basically like a 9-to-5 operation for the most part, and these businesses and each separate business, I was told by the builder, for the most part, would have only say 5 employees for the most part at each place. So he told me they have a property on 13th Street, and I went there and looked at it, and then when this was all getting approved, we said, okay, that's something that shouldn't be a problem. The problem is now that they have allowed schools there, they have a special needs school for children there, and they also have another school there where now the amount of cars and traffic there has exploded. So as it was understood from having 5 cars per storefront, which would have been, for that parking lot, would be around 100 cars if you take give and take. You can go there, there's only 4 businesses open there now, and there's over 50 cars going in and out of that area now. Now, if you're going to allow for ambulance services, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're going to have ambulance vehicles parked there? How many are they going to be there 24/7? And now we got 7 days a week, 24/7, where they're going to have this.
I appreciate all the input and information, but this is a zoning text amendment to allow those types of businesses in the M1, the B1, in the light manufacturing district.
Right.
It's not specific to just that St. John's property. This is citywide. Am I correct in that, Carrie?
It would be allowed if recommended for approval in those zoning districts as conditional uses. So there would still be site-specific criteria if they were to be allowed. So they would still have to go through another, go through another step.
So just say, for example, they did decide to go into St. John's property, whatever the name of that is. They'd come in here, we would have conditions and restrictions as to what they could do, limit the amount of vehicles, have them inside, hours of service, such as that. If they decided to go into another area, let's just use North Branch, which is M1, they would do the same thing. The use is allowed there, but they would come back and they'd be subject to the same conditions and restrictions consideration-wise. So we would take into account the neighborhood, the access, the whole thing. So we're kind of talking a little bit two different things here.
Well, I understand what you're doing, but I'm want to point out the dangers of, when you have zoning and you set up a business for specific zoning, and now the owner comes back to you and says, well, now I want to do this. And now I want to do, it keeps on raising the bar for the zoning that they want. That wasn't what these properties were originally zoned for, and they keep on coming back and wanting to change the zoning for it. And it's not always to the benefit of us property owners across the street.
Oh, okay. With St. John's, I'm not aware of them ever coming back and asking for a rezone, or did they?
The property has been zoned M1 for quite a few years, so that zoning didn't change. What did change was they had conditional use permits for those uses that were just mentioned. So
The medical rehab services.
there's an early autism project that is providing services to those who suffer from who have autistic needs. There's also another facility that provides a daycare, I believe. So there's two different uses there that did require conditional uses with conditions and restrictions.
But each one comes up before this
Correct.
council for reconsideration. And it's not to say just because you have it, you're going to get it.
But the other thing I would suggest that, Mayor, that when you have some time, the entrance to that property is horrendous. They got a 10-foot wall that they've had several serious accidents. In fact, I got pictures of the last accident we had a car broadside tipped over. In fact, when you enter that property, St. John's actually has put up a mirror because cars were running into each other as they're coming in and out. So the point I'm making here again is the more traffic and the more things you put ambulances in there, and you got UPS, you got semis go. It's with the type of operation you have there with parents and their kids trying to get out of that parking onto Austin Ave, a very busy street, and the more traffic you add there, it's a disaster going to happen, because it just is. We already had several accidents already there, and now you're adding, if you add ambulances there, and these guys are.
Well, no matter what happens as they rent those spaces out, you're going to add vehicular traffic.
I realize
I
that.
get that.
Right.
So I mean, the answer is don't rent anymore. Let's be real. That's not going to happen.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just.
Going to come in.
Yeah.
We do appreciate being made aware of the traffic
Yeah.
going on there. As far as that wall goes, that was probably actually a city requirement to screen that.
I believe that was part of the site plan review. It was also part of the sign plan review, so.
That was probably our doing, which again, may not have been the smartest move in the world. We don't get them all right.
And then one more thing, I'd like to ask, what is the criteria for, we're here talking about all these signs that they have, the special signing that these businesses have to get permission for. Why, I have a picture, they have put up a for lease sign right on Lawson Avenue. That's been there for 3 years. It's a wood sign that they staked out. You have all these restrictions on signage and how signage, and they got this big unregulated sign facing the road, and when I look out of my front window, they got this big sign. So why have all these criteria for signage when they can plunk this thing on every time there's a high wind, the thing gets blown over and they got to pick it up?
We do have signing ordinances without a doubt.
Right.
basically, we didn't have the horsepower and the bandwidth and manpower to get out there and catch every single sign. We now have a compliance officer who's really taking that down, but keep in mind, it's complaint driven.
Okay, I'm
It's not
complaining.
like we run around like the Gestapo and check out the signs and stuff like that. But as the complaints come in, if you were to go to the website and say, hey, sign's been here for a while, our compliance officer would contact them and say, time to come down.
Okay, so
Am
I
I
can,
correct in that, Carrie?
I think you should make it, I think you should contact Tamira Rice, who's our neighborhood preservation officer, and just have a conversation with her about the sign.
who would that be?
Tamira Rice.
Tamir Rice, got it.
There's
Okay,
a compliance officer.
okay, I appreciate it. So, okay, those are my,
Oh, do appreciate the input.
yeah, those are my concerns, and again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a business there, we get all that, but they keep, the bar keeps on getting raised for this stuff, and it's causing more
Important stuff
complications.
to hear once they come through with conditions and restrictions on it. But again, this affects the entire city, this particular one, it's citywide, so.
Okay, well, thank you very much for hearing, I
You're
appreciate it,
welcome.
thank
Thanks for
you.
the input. Anyone else before I kick it off to the commissioners? Okay, which way do I go? Let's go to the right. How about that? Chauncey, you want to start us off?
Sure, just a quick question for Carrie. I want to make sure I understood. So emergency services facilities, that option does not exist anywhere in the zoning code or just in this particular area?
It is not a category that is specified anywhere in the zoning code currently. We only have public, as mentioned, as part of the I-1 district, although emergency services that are, city services are allowed more than just the I-1 district. So these are private emergency services, not in the code right now.
And so, you also made the statement that we may want to include these throughout the zoning code?
What I'm suggesting is that the emergency services facilities be considered as conditional uses in the B4, LM1, and M1 districts, not just the M1 district.
Okay, thank you.
Fred?
No questions.
Don?
Oh, Chauncey's, question answered mine, thanks.
Chris?
No questions.
Greg?
I have no concerns. I mean, as long as it's staying a conditional use, they have to come back with conditions and restrictions so we can view any hazards or concerns at that time.
Yes, it would be contextual, so site specific.
Ashley?
Nothing from me.
Don?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Yes, what does private emergency facility means?
So basically private ambulances.
Serving what? What's the difference between the private and the hospitals or like the 911? What's the difference?
We'll invite Chief Havey up. I was gonna bring him up anyways. He is our resident expert. Assistant Chief Havey.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Mike Havey with Fire. So if I understood your question was about the EMS transport services. So typically, public safety provides, Creek EMS services, medical and fire. Private sector, the EMS models, they service hospitals and interfacility transfers between CBRFs or assisted living or other, actually even home care. So that if a patient is discharged from the hospital and they can't go by means of their own, they may need to be transported by ambulance because there's no other way that they can get home on their own or they medically need a transport. So it's a private service model, and not speaking on behalf of private models, but Bell Ambulance Services, Milwaukee, Paratech recently did, Curtis Ambulance. So this is a private ambulance service that they are fairly prevalent in southeast Wisconsin. Just this area, the growth and development and the recent hospital that opened up is going to drive that business model a little bit further.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Greg.
I guess I just have a quick follow-up. So I used to work on a private ambulance years ago and in Milwaukee, and we did basic life support runs for the fire department. Do people currently do that for Oak Creek Fire, or is there a push to do that?
So Milwaukee has a different side agreement because they don't provide BLS transports in their own jurisdiction. So most municipalities in Milwaukee County provide what's considered a BLS. I'm using acronyms, sorry if it's called Basic Life Services. So then there's Advanced Life Services and BLS services. So those are really done at a level as what the jurisdiction is willing to provide. So your example of Milwaukee, they didn't have the capacity to do those services, so they contracted out. Currently, there's, my understanding, there's no appetite for, private BLS services for municipal services or emergency services. It's just that model of private services for interfacility.
Just one more question, Chief, while you're up there. Typically, do they make runs with sirens going like you typically do leaving the house, or is it more of a subtle, oh, we're going to transport somebody?
So they're called interfacility agreements, between where the patient is being picked up from. So it could be, there's different categories of operations. One is a critical care paramedic unit, which is the highest level, an ALS level, a BLS level. So those interfacility agreements typically are not acute or urgent. So the interfacilities are not, it's not dictated by a 911 call that there's an urgent need to have an EMS or a first responder unit there. So that hopefully answers the question that it's not being driven from 911. That call is, it's a pre-scheduled transport between an EMS unit and the hospital. There could be some acuity in the condition of the patient. Maybe there's a change in patient condition while they're there or need to upgrade, depending on what facility they're going to. But that typically the interfacility is a non-emergency transport.
That's just the future thought is, you know, if this goes through and goes forward on conditions and restrictions.
A lot of it's driven from their, you know, the agency has to do an operational plan with the state of Wisconsin DHS. So in their operational plan grants them the authority to do certain calls if they're able to transport red lights and sirens, or if it's interfacility based on their mode. So a lot of it's really driven from their operational plan, which I'm not privy to at this point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Actually, I have another
Oh, yeah, go
question.
ahead, Christine.
So there is no overlap between their businesses and the 911 facilities, like the emergency.
So our dispatch center receives a 911 call and it's dispatched out locally. In the event that there could be a mass casualty incident, that would be a time where we would extend resources out to private model EMS in those cases. So it is possible, but it's, hopefully, we don't have those occurrences.
Okay, so they are just by request in case
That's
there's
correct.
no major.
Individuals can contact them on their own, it's private, or they can be, arranged through the agreements with the facility and the transport business.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
While Chief's up here, anybody else want another crack at him? Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, glad to be help.
I myself, don't have any questions. Again, this is a citywide consideration. You know, we're just not talking Boston Avenue. This could happen anywhere, from power plant all the way up to, the northwest side of town there on College Avenue as well. So, you have to take that into account. But anyhow, any further questions? Comments?
If there are any concerns with the zoning districts that are being proposed by staff, we can certainly take that into consideration in the suggested motion. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with B4, LM1, and M1, then there would be no change to the suggested motion.
So, we'll call for a motion.
Seifert moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the proposed amendments to Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code pertaining to private emergency services are approved after a public hearing.
Anna seconds.
Roll call, starting with myself, I believe. So I will start, aye.
Guzekowski, aye. Hold aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. And I. Bill, aye.
Dipshinsky, aye.
Clark, aye. Okay. That will get us to item 8E, site building plans submitted by Sam S. Dickman, the Dickman Company for an expansion of a parking area at 10303 South Oakview Parkway. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a property that is right at the entrance to Oakview Business Park. And the proposal is for a 23,735 square foot asphalt addition to the existing parking and loading dock area on the west side of the property. I will note that this is actually after the fact for Plan Commission review. These stalls are already in place, and the request is for these new employee stalls, 27 in total, for one of the tenants of the building that is currently seeking occupancy. So to draw your attention to the area, this is on the northwest side. We do have berming and landscaping in place in that corner due to the location adjacent to a residential area. None of that landscaping that was required as part of the original approval is being disturbed by this. There is no curb and gutter. This is just straight asphalt. There is a suggested motion for approval with the conditions on the screen. If there are any questions, staff would be happy to answer them. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Applicant Sam, you want to wait for commissioner? You want to say something? Right? Okay. Christine, would you like to start us off, please?
No comments, no questions at this time.
Okay, Dawn?
Oh, I don't have anything.
Ashley?
No comments.
Greg?
No questions, thank you.
Chris?
Same, no questions.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
No questions.
Chauncey?
I do have a question for the applicant.
Sam Dickman, 825 North Prospect Avenue, Milwaukee.
My question is in regards to the additional parking that's needed for the employees. Can you provide a little more information on why the expansion?
Sure, we have a tenant moving in who's manufacturing, and they have a heavy amount of employees, so we needed to find a little extra area for parking.
Thank you.
I have no further questions, just comment. Great to see a manufacturer in, great to see the need for parking, and that means jobs, so excellent. Motion please on E.
I was gonna make a motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and related plans submitted by Sam Dickman, the Dickman Company, for the property at 10303 South Oakview Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirement remains in effect. 2, that all conditions of approval from the November 24th, 2020 remain in effect. Number 3, that the revised plans, site, landscaping, etc. are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Holdani seconds.
Roll call, starting with you, Chris.
Guzekowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. And I. Earl, aye.
Pipchinsky, aye.
Lorik, aye.
David Chai. Okay. That will get us to item 8F, plan review. Review site, building, and related plans submitted by Mark Tagunhouse. Well, I probably got crushed that one, didn't I?
That's fine.
HSA Properties for a multi-tenant industrial building on the property at 10551 South Oakview Parkway. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in the Oakview Business Park. It is part of the M1 PUD. The proposal is for roughly 155,000 square foot multi-tenant industrial building on the property. Up to 4 tenants would be allowed or could be accommodated in the building, although none have been announced at this time. On the screen right now is the proposed site plan for the site. Setbacks and dimensional requirements appear to be met in the plans for both the building and for the parking lot. There was a comment in the staff report regarding setbacks for pavement on the north and south. That has been confirmed that it is at least 5 feet. Therefore, perimeter landscape requirements can be met. Access to the property, on the north and south portion off of South Oakview Parkway, it is an internal access point. There are 2 separate parking lots for employees and visitors on the east side, and then for truck and trailer parking on the west. That's in addition to the loading docks, up to 22 loading docks that are being shown on this proposed site plan. So there's 109 parking stalls on the east, 37 semi-trailer and truck parking stalls on the west. We'll note that there is a requirement for parking that is a little bit of not an issue, but kind of an interesting situation here. for these multi-tenant commercial or multi-tenant manufacturing buildings where we don't have tenants, we don't know what the operations are. There's two categories that they can fit under. They can fit under warehousing, or they can fit under the general manufacturing, processing, fabrication. So warehousing operations have their own requirements. That's one stall for every 5,000 gross square feet of warehouse space, plus one stall for every peak shift employee. But manufacturing has its own requirements, and that's basically one for every employee. The difficulty there is not knowing how many employees you're really going to have. We only have an estimate. And not knowing how much is going to be devoted to warehousing. Now, we will note that warehousing doesn't necessarily mean that there are going to be more employees. So in this instance, at least 150 parking stalls just to service the employees would be required. With 24/7 anticipated operations and primary activities between that 5 a.m. and midnight time period, that may change based on the tenant needs. We also know that tenants end up having more specific employee needs. There could be more in terms of office employees versus truck employees and vice versa. Taking all that into consideration, we would calculate that 181 parking stalls would be required in total. And since there are only 109 being proposed, they are short. So it will be up to the applicant to kind of demonstrate that what they are proposing would meet all of their future tenants' needs for parking. The concerning part is, again, not having enough parking provided on site for the anticipated employees. Previous example, we find where on the site to put these extra parking stalls should the need arise. So that's why we have that concern that's been raised in the staff report. And as of speaking to you right now, we've not received either a parking study or a request for a modification to the parking requirements. So again, up to the applicant again to demonstrate that what they're proposing will meet those needs. On the screen right now is a landscape plan. I will note that we did get an updated landscape plan today. That's not incorporated into this presentation. However, staff have not had adequate time to review that. But we're going to divide it into two parts for you. So on the west side, we are showing some landscaping on that southwest corner and the northwest corner, so kind of around the access to the loading docks and parking areas. That interior space also kind of has a grade issue, so they can't put landscape all the way around it. The dark line is actually a proposed retaining wall. Retaining walls by code, if they're going to be 4 feet or higher, 4 feet in height or taller, I should say, they do have to be designed by a professional engineer. And because this is proposed to cross a water and sewer utility easement, they do need to have specific water and sewer utility approval for that. They are aware of that. The water and sewer utility has been made aware of these plans as well. That's one of 2 retaining walls. The other retaining wall is on the south side. There are no concerns with that, assuming that, again, it meets the requirements for if it's going to be 4 feet tall or taller, that it has to be designed and installed by a professional engineer. And then on the south side, on the east side, that's where the majority of the landscaping is going to be proposed. That's along the entrance, that's along South Oakview Parkway. The concern here, and I should mention the concern with the other proposed landscaping, is to ensure that trees are not in the utility easements, and the applicant has been made aware of that. They have provided comments back that there are no trees that are proposed in those easements, and they are also going to be taking a look at the vision corners to make sure that all the tall landscaping is pulled back adequately so that everybody who's entering and exiting these areas can see both directions. And then additional revisions that would be required. They provided some information that staff concerns would be addressed in them. What's on the screen right now are the proposed elevations for the building. The overall materials are basically, these are concrete tip-up walls. They are insulated, precast. There are 4, it's a little bit difficult to see from these elevations, but there are 4 proposed shades of gray and then a blue accent band. Now, although 4 tenants can be accommodated in the building, there are only 3 entrances that are showing. They are anticipating that this would probably be a divisible by 2 building, which is why they have the 2 corners as being their accented entrances. Staff did actually ask for that center entrance to be a little bit more prominent, raise the parapet up a little bit, make it a little bit more accentuated as an entry facility. They've actually said that they would rather not do that in anticipation of the 2 corners being the main entry points for the building. Staff's comment still remains. On the north side, just giving you a little bit better viewpoint of how that entrance and then the north elevation would appear to, actually, the property to the north is a stormwater facility. Along the west, this is the loading dock area that actually faces another manufacturing facility, or property, I should say. Then the elevation on the south, which basically mirrors the elevation on the north. On the screen right now are some renderings. This is one of the corners. And this is the entirety of the east elevation. We'll note that trash enclosures were not included on the site plans, and if there are going to be trash enclosures, those do need to be identified, and they do need to have their materials identified. If they are concrete walls to match the building, that's acceptable. That would be brought to the Community Development Department should something like that be proposed. Other things that were not provided at this point were lighting spec sheets. What we are saying is that fixtures have to be directed downward and shielded. And then any kind of rooftop mechanical units that would be required as part of the tenant build-out spaces, those would have to be either fully screened by the roof elements, the parapet walls, or they would have to be screened by screening materials approved by the Department of Community Development. Because this is a multi-tenant building that can accommodate up to 4 tenants, there will be a requirement for a master sign plan for the maximum. If there is, if the building ends up being occupied by 1 or 2 tenants, that's fine, but we do need to have a master sign plan showing where all of the tenant accommodations for signs can be. So that will be required prior to issuing any permits for the signs. Also not shown on the sign plan, or the site plan, would be a monument sign. Monument signs would have to be located at least 10 feet from property lines outside of vision triangles. And as long as it's properly sited and meets the requirements of code in terms of size, that could go forward with a permit after the sign plan review. On the screen right now is the suggested motion for approval for Plan Commission consideration. It is one of 2. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Would the applicant like to say anything before we go to commission, or you just want to hang out and wait?
I'll wait for questions.
Okay. Chauncey, you want to start us out?
Sure, I do have a question for the applicant.
I'm Mark Grotenhase. I'm at 100 South Wacker Drive in Chicago.
Okay, can you provide more information in regards to the parking stalls identified at 109 versus the 181?
Understanding it's a spec building, and we don't know the tenants that will come to our building. And formulas are great for figuring out parking requirements, but in this case, again, it's a crystal ball question, not only for parking, but also for signs, monument signs, trash enclosures. We don't really know what's going to happen. What we've seen in the history is 1 or 2 tenants would take this building. So we think it's an appropriate start for a spec building. And I think as tenants come to us, I'm sure we'll have to go through a permit process for their needs and their signage and parking and so forth.
So do you have any potential plans if it's larger than 1 to 2 tenants?
What we've done in the past is there's ample trailer storage on the west side, and a lot of times we've used that area for parking, car parking.
Okay. And then for this third entrance that Carrie was referring to, can you provide a little more information on that? Will that actually be an entrance or just emergency exit? What's the plan for that?
Well, we've raised the elevation for a possible entrance to serve if you split down the middle for another 2 tenants. So again, as the building is occupied, I think that's something we'll have to address. But I think at this point in time, it's an appropriate entrance. If there's concern for a canopy or something like that for a tenant, I think that's something we could talk about for that tenant improvement permit process.
Okay. And then for the other entrances, is there some type of overhang or canopy for the people when they come in to protect them from the weather?
You know, that I'm not sure we have an overhead canopy. I think it's a significant amount of curtain wall or storefront. And I think it's inset in the building, but offhand, I don't believe we have an overhang canopy.
Okay, thank you.
Ed?
No questions at this time.
Okay, Don?
Nope, no questions.
I have no questions on it.
No, nothing? Hey, Greg?
No questions, thank you.
Ashley?
I have a few comments mainly pertaining to the utilities on site. As Carrie mentioned, on the west side of the property, there is a retaining wall that's shown within the sanitary sewer easement. If the applicant could work with the city to obtain a hold harmless agreement for the retaining wall to be in that sanitary sewer easement.
That we've done that before.
Okay, perfect. Next one, the sanitary and water main laterals that are not used will be required to be abandoned at the main. So
Okay.
the water and sewer utility has some suggestions and thoughts to kind of help you out with that. If you need any help with that, we can help you work
Okay.
with them on.
Yeah, I'm sure Pinnacle Engineering, we can work with staff.
All right, sounds good. Next one, there's a sanitary manhole within the southwest corner of the parcel, so just kind of outside that retaining wall. If you could look at possibly squaring off that road, instead of it being more of a radius, this would allow closer access to that manhole in the corner for maintenance. Maybe even like some type of pad would be fantastic. So there are known issues at that manhole that our water utility has been monitoring. So if there's any way that you'd be able to possibly get closer to that or kind of be out of the way when trucks would be turning in that area, just something to take a look at.
Sure, sure.
Another one, there's a sanitary manhole within like that trailer parking on the west side, within the paved area. Two things there, if you could possibly look into striping off that area so it would not allow for a trailer to be parked over that. And then in addition to, it should be called out for adjustment, that manhole as well.
Okay.
And then one final comment, the plan appears to be missing information on the water lateral. There's no size or details on length, spans, or elevations.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Ashley, thanks. Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions slash concerns. So I think it's more to Ashley, if not to the applicant. So this building right here has only access to Oakview Parkway. However, it's accessed by Oakwood Road. So, and the 13th Street off of Oakwood Road is straight to the 94. So I'm guessing the majority of the employees will be accessing Oakwood Road, which is is 90% residential occupied. So how that increase of traffic is going to be controlled on Oakwood Road, which is a local road?
So from what I'm aware of, when that entire area was being developed, a traffic study was completed and it did account for distribution at that parcel.
From my information, that was not done correctly. So there is some issues there with regarding traffic operation and, safety for the volume of traffic at on that street. And people do not stop, and the law enforcement can confirm that, especially on 13th Street, which is a stop sign, controlled versus signalized. So with that increase of traffic, I don't know if it's gonna be warranted for a signal, or how is this gonna be accessed and studied further?
So what I can tell you is that whenever 10303 South Oakview Parkway was being developed or was presented for development, those concerns were addressed, because they were proposing distribution at the very corner of Oakwood and South Oakview Parkway. It was determined at that time that an additional study was not needed. If there are going to be any enhancements that are needed for the remainder of the park, and this was already anticipated as part of that, it would really be related to how the rest of the parcels, especially on that corner opposite of 10303 South Oakview Parkway, would be developed. So that was looked at again, and they would determine that as part of that traffic study, there wasn't any need to do any upgrades at that time. I will note that this particular site did have a conditional use permit that was issued, and that was done last year for freight yard, freight terminal, and transshipment depot facilities, and there was still a restriction on trucks using Oakwood. So we can't really restrict passenger vehicles on Oakwood, but truck traffic we did restrict as part of the conditional use permit.
So, the trucks are not abiding by that rule, number one. Number two is I actually asked for a copy of that traffic study. And from my knowledge, it's not adequate with the current volume that is traveling there. So I would request if that could be, take a look at it again, just for the sake of the resident living on that street.
Okay, so if there are traffic concerns, then I would say that we would have a conversation with the police department, and I'll have a conversation with the city engineer to determine whether or not there's additional signage that would be required, mentioning the no left turns for trucks. Other than that, I can just tell you what I've been told, which is that, as far as the traffic is concerned, there were no other concerns or requirements for upgrades at this time. But again, future development and the rest of the park would probably at least be considered for whether or not additional upgrades to the park would be required.
Okay.
Couple things on my end. This spec building's being built out for up to 4 tenants, correct?
Essentially.
Then we should park it for 4 tenants. That's my opinion. We run into this all the time. I get it. It could be 2 large ones, 1 large one. But even still, when you get a building that square footage and you're going to build it out for possibly 4 tenant rentals, you should park it for 4 tenant rentals, as well as the trash enclosure. It should be built for the maximum. The midway, again, if it's going to go for 4 tenants, I would make that middle section as prominent as possible, whether through a canopy or, a raised parapet or a larger glass enclosure if you're going to split that and go down hallways or whatever. Because we get these spec buildings and we don't know what's going in. Usually we at least have the air of what one tenant will be, if it's going to be manufacturing, if it's going to be warehouse or logistics. In this case, we really don't have any. So that being said, I really feel pretty strongly about that. Christine brings up a good point. We can't really police that road once these businesses go in. They pretty much rock and roll any way they want up Oakwood Road. We get numerous complaints on it. We're always assured they're going to tell the tenants you can't do it. Short of reconstructing that entrance into the parkway and making it an only left turn to get them back to Howell, that eventually it's going to have to happen. And if we have to address that through the tenant, through the park, on a special assessment or whatever, it ain't fair to lay it on you or to lay it on any other applicant coming in. But this has been an ongoing problem, and as we fill up that park, it isn't going to get any lighter. For employees, I have no idea which way they're coming from the south, from the north, from the east, from the west. They come in any number of ways. My concern is the trucks. So, that being said, there's just a lot of unknowns with spec buildings, and we've learned that over time, unfortunately. So, if it's gonna be built for up to 4, park it for 4. It's my 2 cents with it. Continue to work with staff. Green space, are we hitting the green space on this one?
Green space was calculated for the entire park, so this is still within the threshold.
Still makes it, so.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everybody, I guess, kind of hit it. Those are my only real notes going forward. So, any other discussions, questions?
Quick question for, the parking and possibly the canopies. Does that have to be included in the motion?
I don't think it necessarily has to be included in the motion, but I would just encourage the applicant to consider amending the plans so that the trailer parking, if it's going to be an area identified for future tenant parking, that it be put on those plans as such.
So like the trash enclosures aren't showed, so we can assume they're gonna eat up 3 to 4 parking spots? So we're gonna be even lighter?
From my understanding, trash enclosures for buildings like this are typically put in the loading dock areas.
Oh, they are?
themselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Then that's, don't worry about that. Sorry about that.
But if a separate enclosure is required, then we would make sure that they meet all the requirements in terms of constructible materials and location.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
Good points on Mayor on with the parking. I agree.
We've just run into it before, and then the building goes up, they get a tenant in, and then it's like, can we do this because we need the leaves and the whole deal? And then we're trying to squeeze it in and make it fit, and it just never seems to work. It just doesn't. And then we're scrambling, and we really put our staff in a bad spot on the backside of it. Because they'll call me and I push it to you guys. So, and I ask you guys for the answer, and it gets difficult. So.
My question would be, do we have to vote on this today, or it has to come back to us with all of those comments addressed?
It's up to the plan commission if you are comfortable with staff in making sure that those revisions based on the plan commission's comments tonight are incorporated prior to building permits, or if you want the plans to come back to you so that you can determine that those comments have been incorporated. It's up to the commission.
I personally trust our staff to work this out and know it's adequate. And, they've been working with the applicant all along, versus us seeing it in 2 weeks or a month and pushing the poor thing, the whole project back, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I'm comfortable with staff, but I can't speak for the rest of you.
I agree with that. It's just still my very much concern is the traffic. So, that would be my hold up on voting on that. So I just, sent you an email, Carrie, that I would like to see a copy of that traffic report.
Okay, I will have to get with Matt to get a copy.
Sure. So until I see this, it's just hard for me to vote on anything.
Yeah, but, we can still motion on it. There's still a handful of us there, so. I'll call for a motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the plan commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Mark TEGROOTENHUIS HSA Commercial Inc. for the property at 10551 South Oakview Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all plans are revised to include all mechanicals, transformers, and utilities. All mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building, and rooftop shall be screened from view. 3, that all landscape plans are revised to include the location of the easements, heights, and all screening plants at installation and maturity, and showing all trees outside the utility easement. 4, that all plans are revised to incorporate details to the proposed retaining walls. 5, that all plans are revised to include details for trash enclosures. 6, that all detailed master plan is reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission prior to submission of signed permit applications. And 7, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Before we get a second, do we have to include that applicant will continue to work for adequate parking with staff?
No, I think that either you put in a condition that says that plans should be revised to incorporate Plan Commission comments regarding the architecture of the building, and for future parking needs, identify that future parking area.
As
As
noted,
amended?
as amended.
One quick question. Do we also have to include the suggested changes from engineering?
No, those are technical corrections. Those
Okay.
are really related to things that are on the site that are part of kind of the normal requirements for any site development. So, you know, the abandonment of the laterals at the main, the concerns regarding the manholes that are on the property, those are typical. So I'm comfortable with saying those are technical corrections. So condition number 8 would be that revisions to the elevations incorporating Plan Commission comments on the center tenant, as well as the future parking areas identified on the plans prior to submission of permit applications.
As stated.
Oracle second.
Roll call with Don?
Donnie, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
I'm not sure how am I gonna vote on this. What am I?
So it's the conditions and restrictions as listed, with condition 8, having the applicant address the architecture and the parking adequacies with staff.
Yeah, but remember I just said my concern with the traffic, so this is where I'm not sure.
Again, you requested the traffic site, but we don't have a condition to have a traffic study done on this because it's been done.
Yeah, not for this particular property, no. I can get you a copy of the traffic study for the park, sure. Whenever I can get that from staff when it's available, but I don't have anything that would be specific to this parcel. It was included as part of the entire park.
Okay, Hannah, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Pipchinsky, aye.
Clark, aye.
David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Okay. Great. Just continue to work with staff. Thank you very much. Item 8G, consideration of a temporary use permit for the temporary garden center at 7501 West Howell Avenue. We've all seen this before, but Carrie?
Just a correction, it is South Howell Avenue. And this is a temporary use permit for what used to be called Westview Gardens, and it was taken over by Casey Erdl, excuse me. And the name changed to CE Farms to recognize that. So it's the same garden center in the same location that we've seen in Classic Lanes, and it's been approved every year for the last 13 years. So on the screen right now, this is the same thing that was shown to the Plan Commission last year. This is the location on the site. This is taken from Google Maps, or Google Street View rather. So there's one hoop house, those are the approximate dimensions. Hours of operation this year are 9 to 6, Monday through Saturday, and 9 to 5 on Sundays. There is an allowance for 132 square foot sign, temporary permits that would be required as per usual. There is a suggested motion on the screen in 2 parts for approval. It is also recognizing that we are requiring them to restore the parking lot to its precondition following the termination of the permit, which would be July 31st. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions? We'll start with Christine.
No, it's straightforward. No question. Thank you.
Dawn?
No question.
Ashley?
Nothing from me.
Greg?
No questions.
Chris?
No questions.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
No questions.
And Chelsea?
No questions.
Okay, I have none either. This has been a really good resource for the citizens of Oak Creek for 13 years now already, so it's very good. One thing Casey may want to do, Farmers market's opening early on top of it for a very nominal fee. You can take part in the market and bring some product over as well and direct people over. So you may want to. Okay. Just thought, just trying to sell the market. So, if there's no further questions, motion please.
I'll go. Ladani moves that the Plan Commission approves the temporary use permit request submitted by Casey Ertl, Westview Gardens for the operation of a garden center in the parking lot on the property of 7401 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all garden center activities shall be located within the portion of the parking lot as per the proposed map. 3, the operation shall occur between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday and between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Sunday. 4, that signage for the operation is limited 130 to 132 square foot temporary sign. 5, that a tent permit is obtained for the temporary garden center. 6, that the temporary use permit shall be valid between April 15th, 2022 and July 31st, 2022. The property shall be restored to its pre-temporary use condition by no later than July 31st, 2022.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call beginning with you, Fred.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. And I.
Bill, aye.
Shinsky, aye.
Laura, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Okay, good luck. Item 8H, review preliminary subdivision plot submitted by Jessica Ganter for F Street Development Group for the proposed Lakeshore Commons Phase 1 subdivision located at 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of several that will be brought before the Plan Commission as Lakeshore Commons continues to develop. Just a reminder, this is the traditional neighborhood development PUD for Lakeshore Commons. As proposed, there are lots 1 through 9 for development and outlots 1 through 4 for stormwater and public amenities. Easements, wetlands, dedications of public streets, those are all included on the condo, or on this particular subdivision plat. Condo plats and future subdivision plats for future phases are forthcoming. So I'm going to split this up into 2 sections just to make it a little bit easier to discuss. Again, this is for phase 1 and only for phase 1. So in the future, when the rest of the development moves forward, we will see more plats and more condo plats that come forward. What I've highlighted on the screen in the first portion, which is kind of the northwest portion of the development, the purple, green, and red are the development lots in that section. And then there are 2 gray areas, those are outlots. So those are actually areas where stormwater and other infrastructure are proposed. The dedication of the streets includes this north-south Breakwater Boulevard. And then east-west in this area would be Ironwood Drive, Basswood Drive, and Tamarack Drive. In the southern portion of phase 1, again, I've tried to kind of do the same thing. The color lots are the ones that are for development. The 2 gray are the outlots for either infrastructure, in this case mostly stormwater, or for the public amenities, including walking paths. Actually, they incorporate both. We've not seen the development of any of these lots save for Lot 8 at this point. Lot 8, you'll recall, had the 2 multi-family residential buildings, as well as the 2 8-unit townhouse buildings and the 2 6-unit townhouse buildings. This preliminary plat does not affect those approvals. The preliminary plat does meet all the district requirements. The city has been directly involved in the design of the public infrastructure, so these areas are not unfamiliar to what staff has been reviewing. Included in this portion of phase 1 is also the dedication of the remainder of the north-south Breakwater Boulevard. East-west, and I actually cut off the names of all of them. So we have Hemlock Drive and we have 2 others, sorry. I just can't see them. They are on the full portion of the preliminary plat that was included in your packets, however. Those road names have been through staff and they have been vetted by both police and fire. So we don't have any duplicates. We worked very hard with the applicant to choose those names, making sure that there weren't any overlap with others in the city. So thank you very much to the applicant for working with us on that. The final subdivision plat and condo plat would be probably concurrent, and those are anticipated to be very shortly submitted. Revisions that would be required as part of this preliminary plat would be incorporation of the signature pages, which happen to be missing from the file that we received. Just for edification, lot 2 is the proposed lot for where the clubhouse and other amenities that we've seen before, that will be forthcoming fairly shortly. Lot 9 is the location of many of the single family, 2-family, and 3-family residential will be. And those are forthcoming as well. Those will not actually be forthcoming necessarily because those are the ones that will be models as part of the PUD, meaning that we have models for those particular units. So that's not actually something that will be coming before the Plan Commission because of the number. It's basically treated like our typical single family and 2-family residential. They don't come back for architectural. But the remaining of the development for lots 4, 3, 2, 1, and the remaining will be brought back in some capacity because there is a mix of units that are on these lots. So anything that is more than 3 units will be brought back to the Plan Commission for site building landscaping review. On the screen is the suggested motion again in 2 parts for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Go to questions. Commissioner Hannah?
I have no question. Thank you.
Dawn?
No, nothing for me.
Ashley?
No questions.
Greg?
I think you answered most of my questions, but, for any of these lots, I don't know exactly what'll be on them, but I'll just say lot 6, for example. If they're building a single family home residence on there, they don't need to come back for that. Is that correct?
That's correct. As part of the PUD, there were models that were presented. So we do have kind of architectural examples of each of the units that would be allowed on those properties. So 1, 2, and 3, those would be allowed by right. Anything more than 3 units would come back to the Plan Commission.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Chris?
My question's been answered.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
I just have a question. When are they going to start this development? Do we have a timetable at all?
Development is quote unquote started at this point.
Okay.
There is activity on the site.
Moving dirt.
Thank you.
Chauncey?
No questions.
Okay. I myself have none either. I think it was very well explained, so. Seeing no further questions or comments, motion please.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves preliminary subdivision plat for Lakeshore Commons submitted by Jessica Ganther, F Street Development Group for the property at 4005 East Lakeview, Lake Vista Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements and conditions of traditional neighborhood development plan unit development remain in effect. 2, that all conditions of approval for the January 11th, 2022 Plan Commission review of the multi-tenant and townhouse buildings on the proposed lot 8 remain in effect. Number 3, that the master landscape design guide and plan are approved by the Plan Commission prior to submission of building permit applications. 4, that all revisions to the plat that are submitted to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications. 5, that all required development and stormwater agreements and land use permits are coordinated with the engineer department. 6, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek water and sewer utility. And 7, that all reviewing agency comments, if any, are incorporated as required.
Oracle second.
Roll call starting with Chauncey.
Amber, aye. Hannah, aye. Kayla, aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Seifert, aye.
Okay, that will get us to the end. Before we adjourn, I want to thank staff, all the hard work. You always make this meeting much easier. IT, great job there. You always, guys always come through. And fire as well. I know not everything's, fire related, but it's great to have you here as a resource. We do appreciate that. And everybody else that, makes us a successful meeting every other week, so we do appreciate that. Just one announcement, we still are in Black History Month, so please check out our library for the great exhibits they have concerning contributions by African Americans, not only to the country, but to the world, during the month of February. And I don't know about anything else going on in the community right now for the next 2 weeks, so I'll leave it at that. We'll look for adjournment.
Willow moves to adjourn at 7:30.
Anna seconds.
Roll call, starting with Christine.
Anna, I.
Made it all the way
Willow,
around.
aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Night, everybody.
You have a